Hey, David T.S. Wood here, and welcome to my Extra Mile. What an incredible show with the ABCs of spicy relationships, and of course the 3Ps of personal care with our relationship expert, Beth Hanishewski. Don't forget, subscribe, push like, share with your friends, and of course, get involved in the conversation by leaving a comment. Really enjoy Beth. She's brilliant at what she does. See you on the other side. Beth, welcome back to the show.
So happy. I love this. I love these conversations.
Well, the conversations have been going great. I've been sort of talking to some amazing people. I'm just checking a couple of things and we've got everything there. Today, your specialty is relationships. And I wonder, we will talk about the relationship formula, which I think we love talking about it. Hopefully we'll be able to do it all in one show. But before we go there, I'm just wondering, people are at home. There's a lot of jokes going on right now about 9 months from now, we're going to either see a lot of babies or a lot of divorces.
Yeah, right.
Wondering, just any relationship tips, not just during COVID, but what's something sort of daily rituals or practices you think that can really accelerate or amplify or make a relationship juicier at this time?
Oh, it's so good. And you're right. Anytime, whether it's, during when you have to be quarantined or, as you said, some sort of season of challenge, like someone's lost their job or someone's sick or a family member, there's a death in the family. Like anytime there's a big event, it is going to change your relationship. And so what I'm seeing a lot of, because we have all these, people being quarantined and not having a lot of personal space at home right now, is that whatever was happening in the relationship before is now amplified. So if there was few problems, now those problems are bigger. But even the best of relationships, I think, are experiencing some, chippiness, as we might like to say. We're getting a little chippy, around here, right?
To put it mildly, let's go with chippy.
Yeah.
Some people are sitting at home listening and thinking, yeah, I want a chipper, right?
Yeah, I may be accused of being chippy once or twice in the last few weeks. But yeah, so, like I said, even really strong relationships are being challenged right now. And it's in part, it's because of that real restriction on your freedom, on our freedoms right now, and not be able to do all the things that we usually love to do that are great stress relievers. So, what I'm recommending to people is to really, create some really good habits or some routines in your day that really serve you. And so I don't know if I talked about this last time, but whatever, even if I did, I'll just repeat it.
You're hearing it again for a second time, that means you had to hear it twice.
Yeah.
So go with it.
Okay, good. Well, I'm a fan of alliteration. So, I always start with myself. So I think that's always the relationship we have to start with. If you want to talk about relationship is, what kind of relationship do you have with yourself and how are you showing up? So when I notice that I'm being chippy around the house, I know I have to come back to my own practices. And so I love the 3Ps. So the 3Ps are pause, purpose, and play. I think these are the three things that really kind of help me be my best. So I try to take time every day to just be by myself, to pause, whether that's, it doesn't have to be a formal meditation, although I've been doing more of that lately. I've been taking took a class. And so I'm trying to, what they call just sit, which is, pretty challenging, I got to admit. But sometimes my pause means taking the dogs for a walk just by myself and just having a pause in nature, if you would. But I think it's really important that we find, even if you have to lock yourself in the closet, just pause, ground yourself, collect your own energy, check in, how are you doing? And I think people are really handle stress differently, and it might be day to day, or it might even be hour to hour, minute to minute, where you're great.
And to your point, just reminding people, you're talking about some rituals, daily rituals.
and so whether we're going through this virus or not, what are your daily rituals that give you moments of pause where, so, and especially a lot of women don't have time for themselves. It's like, they'll, sort of dedicated to the kids and then their husband and then their work and everything else like that. And then the home. And so finding actually me time or quality time is something that not everyone does very well, right?
No, and this is something that I'm still trying to cultivate as a daily habit. Not just when I notice I'm feeling stressed. So it tends to be more of a reactive habit for me. When I notice I'm feeling stressed, I'm like, ooh, I got to do some pause. And so now I'm trying to make it a daily thing. So it's like, starting my day, grounded. The purpose, again, it depends what purpose but I try to do something purposeful every day. Now it might be work, creative work. It might be just making a beautiful meal. It might be, right now I'm really into sourdough bread making, which
I saw that. Yeah.
We're going to have a little bread off because I know you're a great bread maker and I have never been a great bread maker. And it's taken me, I don't know, I think it was 7 loaves of really like brick thick, heavy, terrible sourdough to get a beautiful loaf, but now I've got it down pat. So anyways, but that feels...
I want to come back to your purpose, but do you hear the story when I made a zucchini bread? And like you said, I love making bread. So I made this zucchini bread, and this is years ago before I really understood bread the way I do today. But I added the zucchinis after I'd mixed the bread. And of course, they're so wet that I had to keep adding flour and adding flour and adding flour. By the time I got this thing in the oven, I swear, I make jokes about it, but as it was cooking, it kind of pushed the door open. It was so big and so dense. And in the end, I gave it to Mike and Donna. They said, "Oh yeah, we'll eat it." I couldn't eat it. It was so bad.
Oh yeah, I hear you on the dense. You're right. And I've been I've been like YouTubing the best sourdough people, but Patrick Ryan. Little shout out to him in Ireland. Has taught me the best method, and he always says, "Do not add extra flour. Your bread it'll wreck it. You have to work it." Yeah,
you gotta work it.
Anyways,
by the way, when I make bread,
so something purposeful, right? Like just feel like maybe it's cleaning out a closet. Like right now, everybody has a lot of time to do some things that you've maybe been putting off. Like I completely detailed my office a few weeks ago, and I have to say I love sitting in here now. I used to avoid it and work at the kitchen table or in the living room, and now I love coming in my own office, which is felt very purposeful. So anyways, do something that feels purposeful to you, whatever that is. And then play. So again, how do you play? Like, do you have some fun in your day? And again, you can do this whether you live at home or you live with your people. But, in our house right now, we've been playing cards, which I love. I can't tell you, like, our family, we do play games together, but not like we have now. We found this new card game, and
you gotta tell the name of it.
It's called Oh Hell. So I don't know. Someone taught it to me in January, and so I taught it to my kids. And it's one of the, I don't know. It's sort of
we'll find a link. We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, I don't know. It's but it's sort of like it's a trump game. So it's sort of a cross between kind of some bridge and hearts. It's sort of like that if you know those games. I don't actually know how to play bridge, but people say it's like bridge. So, anywho's, we've been playing literally 1 to 2 games a day. Like that's like almost 2 hours of game night. Like where people go, "When are we playing cards?" That's like fact. Grace left for work this morning, her first shift back to the clinic, and the first thing out of her mouth as she was leaving the door, or the last thing was, "Hey, what time is cards today? I'm off at 4." Right? Yeah. Which I love, right? So I love that we're playing together. So coming back to this idea of couples, you can apply those things as a couple, right? Do you pause? Like, do you have time where you actually are just being you as a couple? And I know that, especially for couples with children, it's really hard to find time that you pause together. And so I think it's important to make that. I think it's important to be intentional, be purposeful about how you spend your couple time. And of course the play, and, which is hard to do when if you're in a relationship is struggling right now and it's way worse than just a little chippy. playing is the first thing that goes out the door, that you don't have fun together anymore. And, a big challenge that I give to couples often who are really in dire straits is to play together, to do an activity that is fun. And it's really hard when you've been mad at that person for a long time to do that. But what happens when we're mad at someone for a long time is all we do in our relationship with them is talk about it. Well, and to be honest, we just complain about it. It's like the airing grievances every day, how they've hurt you, or how they disappointed you, or how mad you are, or how, when are they going to change, or, that's a conversation. So I say, stop talking about your relationship and just have one. Just have one for a minute and find some time to play together and remember what you even like about each other, because you're not going to remember that talking about all of the things that bug you.
And we should talk about play, because play is such a broad stroke. For example, for me, I mean, I can play by swimming laps in the pool. I still feel it's fun because I turn them into games. So it's not necessarily, I mean, there's lots of ways to play. There's lots of things we can do that if you don't have cards, if you don't have a board game, a lot of people can get stumped. It's, well, there's nothing to do. Well, there is. You can turn cooking into a game. Right? I mean, and you can play with that. And I love to cook. So, but you could put recipes in a box and someone pull it out. And there's a lot of different things you can do to make it fun. But, with that being said, Beth, I think that if anyone listens to show 1 and show 2, I'm not sure which order they'll come out. So if they listen to the 3 shows we've done so far, there's some great strategies in there that they can sort of glean from. But the idea about practice, I mean, because when you talk about pause, purpose, and play, there are people who will say, well, I'm paused and I'm on purpose and I want to play, but they'll sort of like try it for a couple of times. And because the relationship's been so sort of fragmented for a long time, often they don't give it a chance. They don't sort of say, hey, I'm going to commit to this for the next 30 days. So it really becomes a habit. And we understand it takes about 30 days to create a habit. And rituals and daily rituals are things you do every day. It's not like, well, I'm going to try it. Let me try it for a week. And if he doesn't change by the end of the week, right, this stuff doesn't work. What do you say to people who are thinking that way?
Yeah, well, I mean, you're absolutely right. There's so much, I think, new research now around habit formation. And, we used to be told, it was 21 days to create a habit. And I do still think it makes a difference. I think you can create some traction in 21 days, but the new research suggests that it's actually 66 before it sticks. And so when you think about 66, that's like over 2 months. So I always want people to be patient, right? Be patient with the transformation. And
4 P's.
I know I got more P's coming actually, because then I thought of another thing that apparently I'm all about the P's this call. But the patience is really called for, and not just with your partner, but with yourself. If you're thinking about your relationship, that most relationship problems, by the time they become apparent that this is a problem, it's taken some time to get there. And so it's going to take some time to reverse that habit. Some people have really, really long-standing relationship habits that are terrible. So for example, we talked a little bit about, fighting. Right? That they're really dirty fighters. Their fights are very, very mean.
And we did a whole show dedicated to fighting and fighting well, having a fight plan. So if you haven't listened to the fight plan one, it's a great show because it's just one subject, the whole show.
Right. So think about that. If you have a pattern of really destructive fighting in your relationship, those aren't just kind of little neural pathways. Those are like wagon ruts. Those are totally solidified ways that you guys, the same thing that you roll down and down and down. And so the patient part is like, it's going to take a while to sort of redirect and get used to that new way of doing things, when your old way is going to be just to be triggered, right? You're just going to want to be reactive. And that's why we talk about, if you want to change your relationship, you have to learn how to be a responder versus a reactor, which is really tough.
Took you a long time, I know.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And we all still can be reactors. But here's the thing. when you notice yourself, okay, so here's the other P's that come into practice practice is one of them. So the rituals that I was telling you about pause, purpose, play, that would all fall under the under your daily practice. If you have that part of your daily practice, that will set yourself up for your best chance of creating some new habits and new way of connecting and new, that's the on the road to transformation. But that having been said, there's going to be times where your old self, your old way of doing things, your triggered self will show up. And that's when you need the other P, which is process. You need to know what to do when that happens. What is going to be the tool that you grab, when things go awry? It's no different than when, if your sink starts leaking, right? You don't go, oh, look at all that water. You think, okay, what tool do I need to fix the leak? Where's the wrench? Where's the whatever? Where's your number to call your plumber? That's what I mean by a tool. You have to know, what can I reach for when I fall back in my old ways?
Give us an example so someone gets something real, tangible, maybe personal, or one you've seen with one of your clients, is, where they, the old habit was reoccurring and the tool they reached was this, and this is how they've been able to sort of over time with practice, remember, patience, perseverance, right? That this comes. But give us an example or a couple if you haven't.
Sure. Well, I think one of my favorite ones takes about 3 seconds. And so I'm a fan of fast and simple methods. So we know when we're being reactive, even though we think we don't, we think it's just a knee-jerk thing. But as soon as we start to react to a situation or a person, a few things happen in our body right away, right? So we get that little, it gets tense, usually in our chest or our stomach. Our heart gets beating faster, right? We start breathing differently. So physiologically, if you can become aware of when you notice yourself, right? It's it kind of just, it's like a wave. It just comes up. And if you can be aware of, as soon as your physiology changes, to do an ABC. So it's very Canadian intervention because it's a bilingual intervention. So for those international, here's a little French-English intervention. So it's called the ABC. So the minute you notice yourself about to react and just blurt something out or text something crappy or anything where you're going to be reactive, is to start with the A. So the A stands for arrête, or stop in French. So you stop, and then B stands for breathe, which is the second thing you do, which is literally take a big breath, the biggest breath you can, just like, and here's the thing, most people, they'll go, well, I stopped, I took a breath, but it's because they forgot step C. Because sometimes you stop and take a breath and still tell that person off, right? You're like, screw you, right? And
you got a lung full of air and you want to get it all out in words.
Yeah, and you just let them have it, right?
3 minutes straight without breathing.
That's because you stopped at step 2 and didn't go to step 3. So if I said to you, what do you think C stands for? What do you think it is?
Oh, you always do this.
I know, it's a pop quiz now.
Okay. Is it a French word or is it an English word?
English.
Go on. Good. Tell me. Go on.
Celebrate.
Oh, there you go.
Celebrate. And here's the thing, because lots of people think, oh, the C stands for choose. That's the most common thing when I ask you this, question. And they're like, oh, I got to choose the conscious thing. I got to choose. No, because when we're reactive, we are not conscious.
Well, that's what we said. Emotions are high. And
emotions are high. Emotional intelligence low. Right. Exactly. So when I say celebrate, this is what you're celebrating, that you stop to take a breath. That's it. Where you go, hey, look at me. I stopped to take a breath. And in that moment, in that little nanosecond where you stop to acknowledge that it'll remind you why you're stopping to take a breath. And that's when you can choose whether you want to tell them off, let them have it, or go, what would be a response? What would be, and literally just to practice. And here's the thing, for everybody listening, I wouldn't practice this off the bat with the person that triggers you the most.
Yeah.
Okay? Because that's like, you know, trying to run a marathon when you haven't even tied up your shoes this week. The stronger.
I was going to say though, you know, if you think of the average person, if I was to follow the average person around with a camera,
Right.
watch how often small things trigger them, strangers, people driving cars, pedestrians,
Right.
all these sort of crazy things. And I watch that, like you say, that constriction and that sort of, you know, whether the temperature starts to rise over the most silliest, crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if you practice celebrating in those tiny moments all through the day,
Yes.
when it comes to the big stuff, you've already kind of mastered it because you've had a whole day where you catch yourself, you're in the car, someone drove in front of you, or the pedestrian walked out too fast, and you feel that moment, breathe, and then celebrate. Woo! You know, so
look at me.
Yeah.
Totally. And you're totally right. It's fine. Pardon me?
Show me how you celebrate. I mean, is it like, do you give it a little like, or you do you do it quietly? How do you celebrate?
Me personally? I'm like, woo!
Okay.
Yay, look at me.
All
right?
Good.
No, I think you need a big celebration. Otherwise, it won't imprint on you. You want to make that celebration big.
And it's a pattern interrupt as well. So that celebration.
Right? So this is where we kind of weave some neuro-linguistic programming, right? You kind of move some NLP because you do what you actually are doing without, you know, we're saying it's all ABC bilingual intervention, but it really is changing your neurotransmitters in your brain of what it normally would do, that old rag and rut where it's like, yeah, screw you. And this way we're going, actually, I could choose different. If I'm going to change my relationship, which is what you want to do. If you're listening to this call, you obviously care about changing your relationship. You know, it starts with how you show up. We would love it if everybody in our life that irritates us would change and read personal development and go to some courses or hire a coach or, you know, but the truth is we can't wait. Well, we could, but we could be waiting a lifetime for people to step up in the way that we want. And our best chance always is to change how we show up because it's the only thing we can control, frankly.
Well, I always say, you know, when we take 100% responsibility for everything in our lives, everything not in our lives, there's no one left to blame. And I think that blame is, you know, we've talked about it before and it will come up in every relationship conversation quite often. That is that, you know, those three sort of victim areas, but blame, justify, complain. But definitely blame is that it's his fault or it's this fault or that fault, right? But taking that responsibility, what I love about that, and I love the celebrate part, is it is very, very simple. And it is a win. When you think that what normally is triggering you, how do you feel after you've been triggered? How do you feel? And especially how silly we feel sometimes, or how regretful. Because if we let the poison out, I always say open mouth, insert foot. You know, if I do get that sort of heated words coming out, invariably I want to bring them back. Invariably I'm apologizing at some point. Say, listen.
Yeah, you're like, oh.
Yeah. So
I stuck that back in there. What I meant to say was, I love you. Right.
Right.
Which, by the way, is another technique. So because people are like, well, what if it doesn't work? Right. And, you know, again, this is where you have to be patient. It's not going to work the first time. You know, sometimes you might go, you know, you stop, you breathe, you celebrate like, yes. And then you still say, you know, screw you.
Asshole.
You know, then it's like, well, okay, repeat as necessary. Right. But even if you screw it up and you can still then, you know, just say, I'm sorry. I got triggered there. What I meant to say was, you know, whatever, and say something better. You know, and people are so thinking, oh, you know, that there's nothing you can do if you screw it up. No, there's tons you can do, right? You can come right back. And, you know, again, we talked about the turnaround on our fight call. And we said, you know, there's nothing to say that if you say the wrong thing that you can't right away say the right thing.
Yeah.
Right.
The fight plan was great because, you know, again, if you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to it because it really is great. What I love about this, again, this technique is because people are triggered by so many small things, it doesn't even have to be a person. It can be a situation.
No.
So you catch yourself anytime. And I think what's going to be interesting for a lot of you, if you practice this, is catching how often you're being triggered.
Yeah.
Right. And I really do feel, Beth, it is an empowerment, because I always feel like when someone triggers me, and pretty much right, there's only 2 or 3 people in the world that typically trigger me, but most of the times I always think that if I get triggered, I've already lost. So I always want to practice this kind of moment of reflection, like I say, the pause, right? And the breath is beautiful because it's physiological, but the celebrate is brilliant. So let's talk again. I think what we'll do is we're going to do the relationship formula on the next call, because I think we have a lot more time.
You say that every call. It's going to be like episode 120. Next call, we're definitely going to do this.
Well, that's why I know that we're going to have a lot of calls on relationships, because there's so much to talk about. And what I'm going to do is, if you're listening, if you want to send questions in, you can send questions into our social media, and we'll handle the questions for you. Any kind of questions you have on, and we'll do a whole call on Q&A if we can get some juicy ones.
Oh, it'd be so fun.
Let's talk about it. As far as other things you're hearing right now, or is there anything else that's sort of more common, or a very, very common question as a relationship coach that, you typically hear a lot, and it seems to be more universal?
Yeah, I mean, there's, people are usually, they fight about different things. And it's sort of like I feel like it's never about the garbage, or it's never about the thing. It's always about what's underneath that thing. So people might fight about chores, or they might fight about money, or they might fight about sex, or they might fight about their mother, or whatever, and it's usually always comes down to a loss of disconnection. So when a couple is disconnected, everything then gets, you're in there. So for me, it doesn't, when I'm listening to people, might be complaining about what they're fighting about. They might be fighting about the parenting, or right now people are fighting about the kids and how to homeschool them or not homeschool them, or let them see their friends or not let them see their friends, or, there's lots of hot topics right now, but they're all related to disconnection. And the more disconnected you are from your partner, the more you're going to fight about these little things. And then, of course, those little things will morph into big things, because then they'll create more disconnection, which means then more symptoms in your relationship are going to look fractured.
Is there a parallel that you've noticed? Something, or it's what I observe, and I'm not sure if it's a real parallel or it's just something that stands out for me.
Yeah.
But that disconnect quite often happens internally first. You see people not caring so much about their personal hygiene, or, making things special, or, just that. So I see relationships, or their body, they start to overeat and they start to feel out of shape. So this kind of disconnection in the relationship quite often I see shows up, there's lots of clutter around the house. It just feels like everything starts to build up. But it does come back to self as well, doesn't it? How we wake up, how we look at ourselves in the mirror, how we prepare ourselves for our day, that vibrancy. Even in a fractured relationship, if we fall victim to it, there's a lot of other things come along with it, right?
Oh, yeah, and you're right. And all those things, the not caring about your physicality or your space, your hygiene or whatever, they're almost like we're ticking all the boxes of depression in some ways, right? So when somebody is not feeling good about themselves, they tend, what do we tend to do? We tend to overeat. We tend to get slobby. We tend to, every task can be really, really challenging. And I want to sort of give some compassion to people that are really struggling right now, because again, we're recording this during a time where we're seeing a lot of people that are really, there's this big thing, we're all in this together, but the truth is we might all be in this together, but we're not all having the same experience. Some people are in great shape. They got lots of passive income. They've got lots of, things. They got lots of food. They got lots of toilet paper. There's whatever. They're good. And they're like, well, I'm lonely, but I can wait this out. No problem. And there's other people who are really struggling and not, worried about everything. And I just want to sort of give some compassion to that, because that overwhelm, if you're not coping, will show up, as you said, in those day-to-day things that we used to think are just sort of normal. Now it feels like a struggle. And so that's why this idea of thinking about, just choosing one thing that really serves you, start there, of just really kind of going, okay, I'm going to just love on myself. So meaning I'm going to, I'm going to eat well today, right? As opposed to eating crap. I'm going to move my body. Like, what does it mean to love yourself? What does that look like to you? Does it mean showering? Yes. Maybe it means making my bed or cleaning up one space. Maybe it means eating well, moving.
It's so funny. It's funny you said that, because I was on a call the other night, and it was an international call, and somebody asked me that question. What's a daily routine right now during this COVID that you think is essential? And I said, make your bed. Because if the first thing you do, you get out of the bed and you make it, and you prepare it, and I always make mine beautifully. I mean, it looks like, because that's how I like it. But then I always then just go make a drink, and then I'll go in the shower, because I know that the shower and the shave, regardless of what's going on, that's how I start my day, and then I'll go and exercise after I shower, not before. So I shower and then go to the gym. So these little rituals, but the making the bed part is just like tick, box tick, you got something done already. You've only been up for like 3 minutes. First job. Woohoo! Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe that's the most purpose, like in the purpose, maybe that's the most purposeful you can be today. Okay. Right. One of my favorite books, The Four Agreements, I know you know Don Miguel Ruiz, but is the fourth agreement, which is always do your best. But what I would, how I like to upgrade that, is always, that always do your best with what you have on that day, because our best
in that moment, right?
Right. In that moment. And sometimes our best, I'm just talking about myself. Sometimes my best is pretty tragic, frankly. It's not that great. It might just be, I'm making my bed. That's it. Right. That's my best. And other days I'm killing it. I'm, doing all kinds of things, and I'm on fire, and that's my best. And so I think that's where we have to kind of insert that compassion for yourself and your people that that you live with in your life, that their best varies too. And that's why, if you notice your partner, so here's, it's great if you notice yourself. If you're being reactive, do something for yourself that takes your reactivity down. If you notice your partner being reactive, so often it's, we ask the terriblest questions, right? We'll be like, what's your problem?
What's wrong with you?
Right. Which is, as you can imagine, does not elicit, I'd love to share with you what's going on for me. They're like, screw you, your judgy thing, because judgment and criticism. If you want to, ruin I feel like I could write a whole, blog or post or book on how to ruin your relationship, because they're equally as powerful as how to, create a great relationship. But if you want to really,
I'm actually going to write this down.
Right.
I think it's because I think when you know how you're ruining it, and I think once we discuss the relationship formula in detail,
right,
then we can have that conversation of all the different ways people inadvertently, because everyone wants a relationship. I mean, why? You think about it, we crave the human connection. And even babies, there are people who volunteer to go into hospitals and cuddle babies. That's their only job, because the mother's passed or the mother's sick or something. And their only job, because they realize without that human connection, without that affection, that the baby
don't thrive.
Right. And so I think that deep in the heart of every single human being, wouldn't we want to have that? And one of the things I've said to myself is there has to be a couple on the planet that has the best relationship on the planet. And I wonder what that looks like, and how do I get there? How do I exceed that? And I say best, I didn't mean that they never fight, because we talked about that. I'm talking about authentic. What I love about a great relationship is when I meet, because I like friendships with the couples separately as well as together. A lot of people, they just go out as couples, but I actually like both individuals and have relationships with both. But I love it when I walk away from when they're together and they sound exactly the same behind their lover's back. It's not like two people, because I see that all the time. It's like this guy walk away and suddenly starts talking like a different person. It's like, well, so what about this authenticity piece, within a relationship where, you're most authentic, you feel like you're most, yourself. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that you said it so beautifully. It's not about pretending. I think it's really funny because I was just having this conversation with a client yesterday who's going through a divorce, and this divorce, she was telling me about this, and she's like, oh, like we had this huge, huge argument, and it was terrible, and ended in tears and anger and thing. And I'm like, well, I'd really encourage you to try to keep that state, like kind of like Caesar Milan, the more calm and assertive you can be in the moments when you're really triggered, the better for everything, better for your son, the better for your agreement, the legalities, your lawyer, everything is going to be better if you stay calm. And she's like, yeah, but I feel like I'm not being genuine if I just, stuff that, anger down. And I said, well, what about at work? Like, let's say you're having a bad day and you're at work and a client comes in and they say, hey, how are you doing? And you go, oh my God, you wouldn't believe it. And you just like totally vomit all over them your day. And then your client's like, are you going to be able to like do your job with me? Like they get concerned. And she's like, yeah, right. Like that'd be unprofessional. And I'm like, exactly. So you could say to somebody, I'm not doing great, without ripping a strip off of them. So there's a difference between being genuine or authentic and being completely overreactive.
Yeah.
Right. You can still say, I'm not great today, versus, whatever, something more aggressive.
Yeah.
I
think it's fascinating because, again, every time we start talking about something, I feel like we could do a whole show on it, right? But, the elegant or divine divorce, elegant separation, coming back to that, what you just talked about in the example, using exactly the same technique you've talked about, I've been obviously unconsciously doing this, having gone through separations, and you can see the relationships I have with my exes. And it really is, I think, in the beginning that first of all, for me, is the understanding of what I want in the future. I want to, because I always call it a transition, not an end. If a relationship transitions, right? Mm-hmm. And what do I want with that? This is someone who I, have spent a part of my life with. And now, if I want to have this end result, these little tiny things you're talking about of just that pause, that breath, and that being able to communicate in a different way because you're clear on the outcome. And I think what a lot of people do when they're fighting, especially that, when they're separating and it's so mean and lawyers are involved, in the end, it costs so much emotionally, financially. And you think, well, even if you could just feel that, you say, well, what do I want? And how do we navigate that together? So I think we could do a whole show on that as well. But we only got a few minutes left on this one. And I just want to sort of like, let's wrap this one up.
I don't know where the time goes.
I know.
Episode 101. I know it.
Talk to me about, again, one small tip, again, that you give to your clients within a relationship. So that sort of help. Or one small thing that you ask them to practice. Whether it's I love little random acts of kindness. For my partner, for Asta, is doing small things. So and I know that those small things over time they send a very, very clear message that you're going out of your way just to do something. I'll give you an example. If I'm in the bathroom first, I'll always put toothpaste on her toothbrush. Right? So when she walks in, there's always toothpaste on there, right? And right. I think you shared a story about that one time. Was it someone who came home late drunk and the wife had put toothpaste? Was that you that told me that story?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. But just this anyway. So talk to me a little bit about that. What is something you can give to everyone sort of as a practice that you think will help amplify their relationships?
Okay. Well, I would say that do you have any rituals like that. Like the toothpaste is a beautiful ritual. It's a love ritual. And to me, it's much more personal, frankly, than the sort of traditional Hollywood or Hallmark, cards and flowers. Everybody watches movies and think the only way to show love to someone is with cards and flowers. But the truth is, it's those everyday rituals that actually make all the difference. So, like Ben and I have, quite a few actually. So for example, he typically gets up first. And one of my favorite rituals that he has is he brings me a cup of coffee to my bedside table. Yeah. And he wakes me up. And I might already be awake, or he might wake me up, but he always wakes me up, or not always, 98% of the year. So I would say 360 days of the year, I probably, if we're home together, he brings me a cup of coffee to my bedside table. And this tiny little gesture is, there's no big words. We don't have a big talk. We don't have might not even be, I love you. That cup of coffee says, I love you and good morning, without even having to be said. So, can you create some rituals like that in your home of what you do? The other thing we do, again, we're back to games, but we're really big on, again, having little games as a couple. So often I'll come upstairs and we'll play a game together. So we used to be big into backgammon, but now we're onto the crib. So we'll play, and it used to be just a weekend thing because our typical mornings are a bit busy. But if you have the time, and now we do it daily because we all have more time. He's not necessarily rushing off to work like he used to. So it's literally every morning we play best of 3 crib. And to me, it's so funny because if we don't play that game, I know we're off, right? I know when we haven't played a game, or, if the coffee doesn't come down the stairs, or it's almost a litmus test when I realize, oh, we're a little off. And then it'll inspire me to then think of what can I do to reconnect? What little thing? And it always is a tiny thing, but I think the most important thing, and we can get into the whole love language another call. But I think that it's important that the thing that you do for your partner in some way says, I know you. Yeah. I know you. I know what you like. I know how you like your coffee. I know how you like your toothpaste. I know how you like the bed made. I know how you like your meal, right? I know the wine you like. Those little things that says, I know you, and I'm going to do this thing exactly how you love it.
That's really interesting because again, when I look at in my own relationship, I just trying to think of all the little tiny sequential things that is done for both of us, do for each other consciously. Yeah. But I think that, people can argue, oh, it's, you've not been married 13 years or 15 years or all these kinds of things. But you talk about rituals, but like sitting down to eat, playing games. Like I love playing backgammon, as and I don't have many people to play with, but I love that, that we sit down together and we play as a couple, and like the same thing, first one to 3 or first one to 5, whatever, right? And we always have like the loser, there's always consequences for the loser as well. So and they're always around kind of loving acts. It's not like, but we make it really fun. But I was thinking about, even like when we sit down and eat, and this is just sort of wrap up this call, is the care we take to just set the table nicely, or to do that little extra, because we're going to eat anyway, right? Yep. But then, just going that little extra, and sometimes, Asta will go outside and pick a flower and just put it on the serviette, and we're just having breakfast, brunch, because I normally have a shake, but so those little tiny things are really powerful over time. But that servant or putting somebody else first, and actually waking up each day with that mindset of what else can I do to make her day or my day. That's really important, isn't it? To sort of try to maintain that, but it's very easy to get away from it as well, right?
Yeah, they are tiny little things. And, some people think that, to transform a relationship, you have to do all these huge shifts. And the truth is, it's not true. You might have to do many things different, but they're all actually pretty tiny. And it's when you add them up. So, it's like that, the string of pearls that we talk about in our lifeline, but it's also the string of pearls for your relationship. And the more little beautiful things you do, the better your relationship can withstand, the tough times, and you can have those tough conversations from a place that's a little bit replenished, right? So you want to think about, what can I do to kind of deposit into my relationship? Because you need to, in order to have those harder conversations or tougher kind of challenges, you need to do it from a place of replenishment versus depletion.
Love it. Love it. With that being said, thank you, Beth. We will be reconvening, and we are definitely going to talk about, we say that, we'll see. Let's see if it comes up.
We should make any more
The
promises.
relationship formula may or may not happen.
Point we will share.
Right. But we will continue having our relationship conversations. Remember, everyone, this is about my extra mile. Some of these tiny little steps, think about the, really 5 Ps, but think about those tiny steps, or those little tiny things we can do consistently over time that create the extra mile. And with that being said, I will see you on the very next show. Ciao.